3 sinister true Stalker-Ex horror stories revealed, terrifying secrets that haunted their victim. Sarah glanced at the clock, its hands spinning, mocking her as she prepared for another night shift. An unsettling pressure built inside her, pushing at her ribs like a vice. A shadow flickered outside the kitchen window, making her heart race, but it was just a tree, she told herself. Yet, it felt like something was more than just the wind rustling the branches. A voice echoed in her mind, "You're being watched." This wasn't paranoia. It was real. The unsettling late-night phone calls had begun as muffled whispers but now sang a chilling tune of threat. Her ex-husband, Mike, was out there. He drank coffee at the same local shop where she sat with Ella and Jake, a mask of charm plastered on his face. The kids didn't have a clue about the monster he could become. Each time the phone rang in the dead of night, her pulse quickened. With the morning light streamed through the kitchen window, things felt normal for the kids. The smell of pancakes filled their home like a comforting embrace, yet dread coiled tightly inside her, like a snake getting ready to strike. Ellen's giggle broke the silence, but it faded as quickly as it came, when Sarah noticed a note by the door, written in shaky scrawl, "You'll never truly be free." The words echoed in her mind like a drumbeat, relentless and haunting. Before she could convince herself it was nothing, she shoved it into the trash, hoping it all disappeared like her marriage. Over countless cups of coffee with other mothers, they filled the corners of their lives with chatter and smiles, but Sarah saw the world differently now. Shadows lurked behind friendly smiles. How they didn't see it, she wondered. How could they ignore the sinister undercurrents beneath their banal suburban lives? She could swear she felt eyes on her, especially when she dashed between her car and the house, groceries in hand, Jake and Ella holding on tight. That night, she sprinted, heart pounding, but the chill that swept across her skin couldn't be escaped. It felt like someone was there, lurking just out of sight, as if Mike's presence draped over her like a dark cloud, an invisible threat. As the whispers in the neighborhood grew louder, they turned into a symphony of voices that questioned her every move. "She's paranoid," they say, smirking behind their coffee mugs. But when she turned to the police, their dismissive shrugs left her feeling like anything but safe. Then she overheard something chilling. Maggie, her friendly neighbor, had once dated Mike. Her heart sank further as she learned he had returned to the community, playing the doting father, drawing her neighbors into his web, sowing seeds of doubt. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. The dread thickened when she intercepted a message meant for Maggie, something about Jake and Ella's late-night activities. Beads of sweat trickled down her spine. The realization flooded her: she was alone, surrounded by people who appeared to care, but with a deep-seated complicity that made her skin crawl. Every casual conversation felt laden with unspoken threats. The moment arrived, she spotted a figure at the corner of her eye, gasping as recognition hit her hard. There he was, Mike, her ex-husband. He peered through her kitchen window, a malignant smile creeping on his face. Confusion morphed into sheer terror. She hurried toward the kids' rooms, panic setting in. Heart pounding, breath caught in her throat. What would happen next? Who was really on her side? As Sarah fumbled with the doorknob, something echoed from the hallway, crackling like ice breaking beneath her feet. Shadows loomed heavier now, and the lines between trust and betrayal blurred, leaving her on edge, steeling herself for the unspeakable that loomed closer, tighter, and more foreboding than ever. The sound grew louder, sharper, like fingernails scraping across wood, and Sarah's heart raced. What had once felt like a dull, continuous dread was now a pulsing anxiety, deep and raw. She barely breathed, her eyes darting to the children's rooms, worry gnawing at her insides. The doorknob felt cold against her palm, a crushing reminder of her helplessness. Behind her, the kitchen felt alive, shadows dancing in the periphery, twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to leer at her. She needed to keep the kids safe, they were everything. The whisper of a slight movement from the hallway sent a jolt through her body. Was Mike inside? Did he know they were there? As she pushed through the kids' bedroom door, it creaked like a warning. Ella lay sprawled across the bed, curled up in her favorite blue blanket, blissfully unaware of the horror that lurked outside. Jake, however, was awake, peering at her with wide, innocent eyes. "Mom, are we okay?" he asked, his voice small and frightened. "Shoo, we'll be fine," Sarah whispered, forcing a smile she didn't feel. She motioned for him to come closer, her instincts screaming at her to act swiftly. The murmur could be heard again, low and insistent, resonating through the house like a dark prayer. It crawled under her skin. "You can't hide, you'll never escape." The voice was distant, yet it cut through the air with a chilling clarity. Her grip on Jake's shoulder tightened. "Stay quiet," she urged, barely above a whisper. She knew it sounded like something out of a nightmare, but this was no dream. This evil wore the face of familiarity, with a smile that once felt like comfort. Just then, the unmistakable sound of a soft thud echoed from the living room, followed by a familiar creak of the floorboards, a sound she worked hard to banish from her mind. Panic surged within her as she calculated her options. Under the bed, she hissed, guiding Jake to slide beneath the dusty space. She slowly backed out of the room, terrified of making noise, yet every step felt like a drumbeat in the oppressive silence. Her eyes remained glued to the living room doorway, the shadows stretching and shifting like the limbs of an ancient creature poised to strike. There was a faint shuffle, and the hairs on the back of her neck prickled. She had to look, she had to know what was happening. Peering down the hallway, she hesitated, about to retreat when a glint caught her attention. The light caught the edge of a knife. It glimmered ominously in the dim light. The realization froze her. The knife was part of her kitchen set, he had invaded her home. Fear turned to icy resolve. She needed to outsmart him, to uncover his intentions before it was too late. As she inhaled sharply, a dark silhouette passed the doorway. She could barely make out the figure moving swiftly, hair disheveled and clothes rumpled. Mike, but not the Mike she once knew. This one was feral, a creature driven by rage and jealousy. She ducked back into the bedroom, breathing heavily, her mind racing. He was hunting. Every pitfall she encountered with him played back in her mind, a reel of torment she couldn't escape. "Stay quiet, I mean it," she urged Jake, who was already trembling beneath the bed. But as her heart drummed louder, Sarah sensed a shift in the atmosphere, a sinister energy twisting around her. It wasn't just Mike, something else was at play. Shadows stirred, swirling as if alive, as though the very essence of fear had come to life in her home, and then a chilling laugh echoed from the living room, a sound so distorted and manic, it pierced the veil of her motherhood, replacing it with sheer terror. She knew the game was just beginning. What new, horrifying revelation awaited her as every second ticked closer to an uncertain doom? A cold sweat dotted Sarah's brow as the laugh lingered in her ears, lingering like a dark mist. It didn't belong to Mike. The twisted pitch suggested something else, something far worse. In the depths of her mind, she fought against the chaos. She had to keep control, had to protect her children at all costs. The shadows outside the bedroom twisted, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw a yellowed smile stretch across the darkness. She clutched the edge of the bed, fingers digging into the worn fabric. "Jake," she whispered urgently, "we need to stay quiet and stay close." The soft patter of footsteps echoed from the living room, drawing closer, dragging through the silence. The floor creaked again, like a taunting reminder of vulnerability. Sarah pressed herself close to the wall, praying it would conceal her from whatever was out there. "Mom." Jake's small voice was small, barely audible yet full of terror. "What is happening?" "Just stay under there," she hissed, panic rising like bile in her throat. No response came, and she feared what he might see, or worse, what might see him. Then, she heard it, a soft scratching, like nails against the wood. It wasn't the haunting laughter now, it was something subtle, methodical. Whoever or whatever it was trying to find them. "Where are you?" Mike called, his voice low but laced with a perverse joy. "I just want to talk," as if sensing her mind racing, the shadows thickened, twisting and curling like snakes poised to strike. The outside corridor felt impossibly claustrophobic, pressing into her senses. She could see the living room from where she stood, a glimpse of darkness where light once lived, then came another laugh, echoing in that haunted house, bouncing off the walls and wrapping itself around her. It wasn't just Mike, something else was digging its claws into their home. She couldn't afford to think too deeply, the terror was suffocating, dragging her under. The door creaked as it slowly began to swing open. Time felt molten, stretching endlessly as the silhouette bloomed again in the dim light. Sarah's breath hitched. She watched, heart pounding painfully against her ribs. "Mommy?" came another whisper from Jake beneath the bed. He sounded smaller, more fragile than ever. "Sure, I'm here," she whispered, fighting back an onslaught of despair. Her instincts screamed that she should flee, that they had to escape. But escape meant confronting the very source of their horror. She cursed herself silently. She should be left while she had the chance. The door's full ascension revealed Mike, but he appeared distorted, as if filtered through a lens of madness. His eyes sparkled with something sinister, and she could see a hint of that knife clutched tightly in his hand. "You can't escape this," he crooned, tilting his head in a grotesque imitation of affection. Behind him, shadows swirled, breathing, almost alive. And there was a whispering in that darkness, words she couldn't fully understand, but it felt impossibly old. Something pressed at the edges of her consciousness, urging her to look closer. Suddenly, Mike stepped back, revealing movement behind him. Another figure loomed, only half formed in shadows, but Sarah felt its presence engulf the room with chilling malice. It swayed, flickering like a candle in the darkness, and she realized it wasn't Mike alone. "Join us," the figure rasped, the words curling into a sinister invitation. A bolt of electric fear coursed through her veins as she realized the stakes. Something bone-deep told her this was not just a confrontation with a deranged ex-husband. This was beyond human, twisted in ways she could scarcely comprehend. "Jake!" she screamed suddenly, "You need to get out." But the room warped around her and the howling laughter echoed once more, drowning everything else out. As Sarah prepared to make the only choice left, an insidious question crept into her mind: what awaited her on the other side of the door? Her heart raced as she stood on the precipice of darkness, facing the unknown terror behind the shadows. Would her desperate choice seal their fate or set them free? The room inhaled sharply as the laughter faded, leaving an unsettling silence. Sarah's heart thudded violently in her chest. She was teetering on the edge of her own resolve, caught between the overwhelming need to protect her son and the paralyzing fear of what lay ahead. "Mommy!" Jake's voice broke through the thick silence, trembling and fragile. Each whispered syllable cut deeper into her already frayed nerves. She couldn't linger. Not a moment longer. Sarah summoned every drop of courage she had and darted to the door, barely aware of Mike's gaze fixating on her like the eye of a storm. She could feel the shadows vibrating with life, thrumming with the same malevolent energy that now extended its icy touch across her skin. "Jake, come on!" she urged, her voice raw and desperate, as she glanced over her shoulder. Jake's small form was partially hidden beneath the bed, fear rendering him motionless. Before she could stretch her arm back to coax him out, Mike took a deliberate step forward, finger tightened around the knife's hilt. "Don't take another step, Sarah," he hissed, his grin widening. The light flickered, casting grotesque shapes across the walls, and Sarah could have sworn that Mike's laugh morphed into something deeper, more primal. Her instincts screamed at her. If only she had listened to the warning bells, to the signs that she had overlooked when Mike started behaving strangely weeks ago. But as a mother, denial was easier to embrace. "Jake, now!" she repeated, louder this time, her words dipping into an urgent pitch. The shadows behind Mike stirred, revealing serrated edges and eerily human forms, clinging to the dark like predators sprawled over her walls. They seemed to throb with greed, eagerly anticipating something she couldn't fathom. He was drawing them closer, letting them feed off his madness. The pulsating energy grew intense, a living entity that wanted to consume her. "Join us," came the raspy whisper from the figure still lurking behind Mike, the tone slithering into Sarah's ears. Her breath hitching, she squinted, trying to see what it was. The half-formed shape twisted, its hollowed eyes locked onto her, beckoning her into its dark embrace. "Join us," it repeated, but there was hunger beneath the allure, an unbearable longing to burst free from the shadows. "Jake!" The urgency finally pierced through the haze of terror. She lunged for her son, reaching beneath the bed just as the floorboards creaked ominously, a warning sign that her chances were slipping away. "Mom, please!" Jake cried, tears streaking his cheeks, reflecting the glimmer of dread in the meager light. He extended his small hand, trembling with fear, and she grasped it, squeezing tightly. They had to get out, but just as she pulled him from underneath, a shadow shifted abruptly, sweeping through the room like smoke. It engulfed them, sucking the warmth from the air. The oppressive darkness thickened, cloaking their escape. "Don't leave me," came Mike's voice, now warped, almost demonic, echoing around them taunting. As the chilling laughter returned, relentless and haunting, they shoved through the door. Cold air blasted against her, a stark contrast, but the living room was disorienting, illusions crawling along the walls. The figures in the shadows writhed, and she felt Mike slip in behind them, his malice a tangible weight. They rushed down the hall, footsteps racing, but the laughter trailed closer, pressing against their backs. Doorways morphed as she ran, leading into more darkness. Her knees felt weak, her lungs burned, but they couldn't stop. "Find the light!" she yelled, though uncertainty swirled within her. The corners of the house twisted and shifted, warping into unknown spaces, mocking her attempts at escape. What if escape was a mirage? "Mom!" Jake squeaked again, panic pinching his voice. Finally, through the pitch-black corridor, a sliver of light glimmered ahead. Faint but promising. Sarah's heart seized. Could that light lead to safety? Or more shadows? Suddenly, her foot caught on something cold and slimy, and she stumbled. The light flickered, extinguishing with the snap of sinister fingers reaching out from the void. As she hit the floor hard, everything went dark, and she felt Jake's grip go slack. "Mommy?" The terror that swept over her was more than the darkness emerging around them. It was the realization that they may never escape. They were not just running from Mike, they were entwined in something worse. Something that thrived in the dark. What had she unleashed? As everything faded to black, a single thought screamed in her mind: what if they were already trapped? As dread dove deep into her soul, the question echoed louder: how far would they go to escape? An icy chill swept over Sarah as darkness cocooned her and Jake. For a heartbeat, she felt weightless, suspended in a void where time seemed to stretch and fracture. Panic clawed at her insides, but somewhere in the recesses of her mind, a flicker of resistance sparked. She dared not breathe, afraid the shadows would latch onto her desperation. "Jake!" Her voice came out as a whisper, swallowed by the dark. "Mommy, I'm scared." His tiny voice trembled beside her. The sound ignited a flicker of courage, fueled by the instinct to protect him. Fighting against the weight of the endless dark, she slowly turned, straining to see him. "I'm here," she murmured, trying to soothe him, but the space around them shifted. Hallucinations danced in the periphery, flickering with familiar faces twisted into mocking grins. "Don't worry, you can join us," the shadow's voice slithered through the air, sweet as honey but laced with poison. "Shut up!" she burst out, desperation morphing into fury. "Shut up!" The sound felt empowering, reverberating against the oppressive silence. A low chuckle rippled through the gloom. The shadows pulsed with life, wrapping around her trembling limbs, trying to pull her back. But she fought. She grabbed Jake's hand tightly, holding on to the warmth and the reality of his presence. Follow me. We have to find the light. Pulling him behind her, she stumbled forward, the ground uneven beneath her feet. It was as if the house itself was alive, writhing and shifting with every tortured breath they took. Mommy! Jake gasped, fear coating his words like a thick fog. What if the dark gets us? Sarah's breath turned shallow. She didn't have the answer. It won't, she lied, gripping his hand tighter, resisting the pull of the shadows that whispered her name. The laughter intensified, becoming a cacophony of voices, disembodied and sinister, echoing in her mind. They knew her fears, her doubts. Join us forever. Jake, listen to me. She turned to face him, her eyes fierce, heart thudding. We're not joining anyone. We're going home. With renewed determination, they forged ahead, deeper into the tortured corridors. As they moved, Sarah spotted the faintest glimmer of light through a jagged doorway at the far end. Hope sliced through her fear. There. But just as they reached for it, the shadows lunged forward, grasping at their ankles with icy fingers that felt alive, pleading, begging. You need us, we are safer here, no. She yelled, pulling Jake closer. He stumbled, his small body recoiling. He cried out, Mommy, please. The terror in his voice was a dagger to her heart. She felt a sickening weight settle deep in her gut as she began to doubt if they could escape. Run. Keep running. The words burst from her, ringing with urgency. With one final push, she propelled them through the door's gaping maw, feeling the hard cold of the floor giving way to a new atmosphere. They stumbled into a room drenched in unnatural light, blinding and alien. Shadows dissolved into the corners, shrieking in protest, but she didn't care. This was separation. This was safety. But the moment they crossed the threshold, the door slammed behind them, locking with an ominous finality. The light flickered dangerously, making the stark walls twist. Where are we, Mommy? Jake whimpered, eyes wide with confusion. I don't know. Fear laced her voice as she surveyed the space. It felt wrong but familiar. Dread swelled as realization dawned. This isn't home. Suddenly, a mirror on the wall shimmered to life, revealing distorted reflections of herself and Jake. It was almost like a memory. A sickening warmth spread through her, and before she could understand, a figure emerged behind the glass mic, his smile now a menacing rictus. The voice shattered her. Welcome to my realm. Did you think you could escape so easily? Jake moaned, pulling his mother closer, clutching her shirt. No. Sarah screamed, but the shadows began to coalesce again, feeding off her despair. She backed away, heart pounding, desperate for a way out. A low growling came from the depths of the darkness surrounding them, promising betrayal. Sarah squeezed her son's hand, racing heart matching the rhythm of the fear coursing through her. She had one last chance. The words slipped from her lips, raw and trembling. What does it take to save us? The laughter echoed hauntingly, filling the space, a promise of horrors yet to come. And then the mirror cracked, a web of fractures spidering across the surface, revealing something far worse on the other side. I hope you're ready, Mike taunted as the last glimmer of light flickered out. What had she truly awakened? And how far would they be dragged into this nightmare? The darkness wrapped around Sarah and Jake like a suffocating blanket, rendering the room a prison of shadows and malevolence. The cracked mirror whispered deceit, its jagged edges reflecting nightmarish visions. As Mike's twisted grin loomed, reality coiled tighter, squeezing her chest until each breath felt like a laborious task. Jake pressed into her side, trembling. She could feel his small heart racing against her arm, a frantic drumbeat that mirrored the chaos closing in. Mommy, I don't want to stay here. His voice was thin, barely above a whisper, piercing through the swirling darkness that sought to swallow them whole. I know, honey, she replied, forcing a calmness into her tone, though panic danced just below the surface. We'll find a way out, I promise. She scanned the room, searching for an exit, anything that didn't trap them in this nightmarish realm. Her eyes darted to the walls, to the flickering light that threatened to extinguish beneath the encroaching shadows. A sudden shattering noise sent a jolt of terror coursing through her veins. The mirror exploded outward, shards spraying across the room like jagged teeth. With wide eyes, she shielded Jake, instinctively pulling him closer. The echoes of Mike's laughter wrapped around them, mocking and sinister. "Did you think you could run from me? From what we created together?" His voice clawed at her reality. Anger surged through Sarah. She had no intention of letting this monster claim their lives. "We didn't create anything," she screamed, a surge of defiance breaking the chains of despair. But Mike only chuckled, the sound vibrating through the room. "Oh, but you did. You woke something inside me, inside yourself. You opened the door." As he spoke, shadows snaked across the ground, merging into grotesque forms that hovered just beyond her reach. "Run!" she screamed, pulling Jake away from the shifting darkness. They dashed through the broken glass, ignoring the sharp pain that sliced through her feet. The walls, slick with an otherworldly sheen, seemed to pulsate, breathing as if the house lived. "Where do we go, Mommy?" Jake's voice cracked, desperation flooding the air. "Anywhere but here." Sarah spat, heart hammering against her ribcage. Ahead loomed a door, beckoning them like a faded memory of safety. She pushed forward, forcing Jake ahead of her. The moment they reached it, the door swung open with a creak, fumes of stale air rushing out like spectral hands grasping for warmth. The light inside was dim but inviting, a stark contrast to the suffocating terror behind them. "Go. Now," she urged, shoving Jake inside and following quickly behind. The door slammed shut, cutting off Mike's taunts which echoed faintly on the other side. They were momentarily safe, or so she hoped. Inside, they stood in a dilapidated hallway lined with faded photographs, eyes watching them from every direction. Each face depicted sorrow, anguish, a warning etched in their expressions. "What's wrong with these pictures?" Jake whispered, his innocence piercing through the heavy air. "They're trapped," Sarah murmured, heart sinking as the truth crystallized. "Like us." Just as the realization hit, the temperature dropped. Shadows shifted outside the door, creeping along the walls like predators seeking prey. The once dim light flickered, casting long, erratic forms that danced with purpose. "Mommy," Jake whimpered, eyes darting between the walls, scanning for safety. "I won't let this happen," she vowed, determination lacing her words. The images on the walls twisted as if alive, unraveling threads of fear that tightened like nooses. Through the silence, a low growl reverberated, a guttural sound full of intent. Something was coming for them, something worse than Mike's haunting visage. Sarah's pulse raced as adrenaline surged through her veins. It was her fight against the darkness growing inside the walls. "Stay close to me," she instructed sharply, pulling Jake even tighter against her. The growl morphed into a chorus of whispers, drowning them with doubts. "You'll never escape, never escape." In the chaotic whirl of emotions, another mystery surfaced from the shadows. An unmarked door loomed at the far end of the hallway, its edges vibrating with a strange energy. "What is that?" Jake asked, barely holding on to hope. "It could be our way out or into something worse." It didn't matter now, they had to choose and quickly. With a swift glance back at the encroaching darkness, Sarah bolted towards the door, desperate to find out what awaited them. When she reached for the handle, a chilling silence wrapped around them. In that instant, they both sensed the weight of the world shifting again behind them, the darkness prepared to devour them whole at any moment. With a resolute breath, she grasped the knob, twisting it. What lay on the other side? Would it be salvation or a new horror waiting in the shadows? The handle turned smoothly, as if welcoming them into its embrace. Sarah held her breath, a cloud of fear wrapping tight around her chest. The door creaked open, revealing an even darker space beyond, one that seemed to extend infinitely, with swirling shadows flickering like flames consuming everything in their path. "Mommy," Jake's voice faltered, but Sarah didn't have time to calm his fears. The growl from before crescendoed, sending chills racing down her spine. They had to move. She pushed Jake ahead, stepping into the darkness. It enveloped them, thick and dank, like the inside of a tomb. Cold, dread-laden air seeped into her lungs, clinging like fog. She strained her eyes, searching for any sign of light, any hint of safety. "Where are we?" Jake asked, his tiny voice echoing against the unseen walls. "I don't know," she admitted, the words tasting bitter. Panic was a tidal wave, threatening to swallow them. As they moved deeper, the air shimmered, illuminating vague forms that twisted around them, figures trapped in a nightmare, their mouths open in silent screams, eyes wide with horror. Sarah's heart plummeted as she recognized them, lost souls, echoing the same despair she felt clawing at her. Each face was a reflection of themselves, portraits of fear that mocked her with their hopelessness. "Mommy, don't look." Jake whimpered as he turned his head, his small hands grasping tightly to Sarah's arm. "We need to keep going." To her surprise, his grip tightened. "I don't want to, Mommy. I'm scared." A sudden shriek erupted behind them, a sound that twisted the air, slicing through the suffocating silence. Shadows elongated, stretching toward them as if seeking to consume everything in their wake. Sarah's instincts kicked in, and she yanked Jake forward. "I know you're there." She shouted into the dark, her voice trembling but defiant. "Leave us alone." Laughter erupted, an eerie, chilling sound echoing through the abyss. "You think you can escape me? You're mine now." It was Mike's voice, twisted and warped, but not alone. Several others chimed in, a torrid choir of lost souls, their collective anguish heavy and vile. "Run!" Sarah urged, propelling Jake ahead, terror gnawing at her resolve. The flickering darkness pulsated around them, shadows churning and shifting, ready to ensnare their fragile forms. They sprinted, the floor beneath them surrendering to unseen traps, as if the very ground was alive, ready to drag them deeper into despair. A stone wall loomed ahead, a dead end just as the wailing increased in intensity. "Mommy, help!" Jake cried, but she didn't have a further plan. The darkness thickened behind them, lapping at their heels like a ravenous beast. "Hold on." She slammed her palm against the wall, desperately searching for a crevice, an escape route. Suddenly, a faint glimmer of light activated an ethereal glow beneath the wall's surface. Heart racing, Sarah pressed against it, her breath hitching. "Don't leave my side, Jake." But as she pushed against the wall, the ground shuddered. Cracks raced across the surface, a quicksilver shimmer pulling it apart, the barrier between them and whatever lay beyond flickering ominously. "Stay back!" she screamed, wrestling the panic that begged her to flee. The shadows rallied, swirling with vengeance, ready to claim their prize. Just then, a feral howl erupted from behind, and in the luminosity, a looming figure materialized, a monstrous shape made entirely of darkness, eyes glinting like polished obsidian. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "What are you?" The creature remained a grotesque silhouette, a mirror of her own fears. "The result of your choices," it hissed, the voice reminiscent of Mike's yet layered with a darker promise. In that agonizing moment, her body acted before thought could follow. With a desperate push, she launched herself through the crack, dragging Jake with her. As they slipped through, the darkness screamed behind them, the sound a terrible crescendo that overshadowed everything. They landed hard, disoriented, and sprawled on the cold, damp floor of yet another unfamiliar space, but this time, it felt different, darker still, a sense of dread bleeding through the air. "What now?" Jake's small voice trembled beside her, holding her breath. Sarah surveyed their new surroundings, her heart pounding like a war drum. The walls were slick and pulsating, and strange symbols danced along the surfaces, whispering secrets of despair. Overhead, a sinister laughter wafted in like smoke, curling around them. It was not over. The shadows would follow, constantly hungry, ceaselessly hungry, and just beyond the corner, something watched them, waiting patiently for their next move. "Mommy, are we safe here?" In that heavy silence, she felt the weight of the night pressing against her, a new dread settling deep in her gut. "I don't know, sweetheart. We must find out." As she stood, the figures on the walls began to shift, their eyes blinking, waking their own stories of suffering woven into the walls. Would they join Sarah and Jake, or would they seek to drag them into the abyss too? What dark secrets awaited them in this new place, and would they be able to find a way back before the shadows claimed them? Time was running out. The walls pulsed ominously around Sarah and Jake, secrets of the damned woven tight in their fabric. Shadows slithered closer, drawn to the sound of their frightened breaths, hungry for their warmth. Desperation clawed at Sarah's chest, each heartbeat echoing the darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. "Mommy, it's so dark," Jake whimpered, his small voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "Just stay by me," she whispered, squeezing his hand tightly. They crept cautiously around the space, eyes darting at every creak and flicker. The symbols on the walls glowed faintly, their meanings lost yet seeping into her mind. Some seemed to tell of escape routes, while others danced with warnings, cautioning against what lay beyond. Was there hope in the darkness, or merely more despair? Suddenly, a low growl reverberated from the far corner. Sarah froze, her instincts igniting. "Jake, quiet!" she hissed. They pressed against the wall, breathless and tense. From the shadows, a figure emerged, a grotesque form that moved erratically, every twist and turn a parody of life. Its eyes blazed like dying embers, fixed on them. It sniffed the air, drawn to their fear like a moth to flame. "Jake, we need to run." Before she could react, the creature lunged. Instinct kicked in, and she yanked Jake down a narrow side corridor, her heart racing faster than their feet could carry them. They darted between jagged walls, the air thickening with a stench of decay. "Mommy, I can't," Jake gasped, his tiny legs faltering. "Keep going, just a little further," she urged, adrenaline pumping through her veins. They reached a dead end, a heavy door looming before them. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Without thinking, Sarah slammed her palm against the surface, praying for it to yield. The door rattled, but stayed shut, the growl from the creature echoing ominously behind them. "Please, let us in," she cried, desperation spilling from her lips. Then, as if responding to her plea, the door creaked open slightly, a sliver of dim light spilling into the dark corridor. She wasted no time, wrenching it open and hauling Jake inside. They stumbled into a chamber that felt alive. The walls shifted as if breathing, absorbing their presence. An eerie silence surrounded them, almost peaceful until the door slammed shut. The noise echoed like a tomb ceiling. "Where are we?" Jake asked, looking around, bewildered. The air held a weight, thick with dread and ancient sorrow. Sarah scanned the room, her body tense, ready to flee again at a moment's notice. Strange artifacts littered the space, broken mirrors, frayed photographs, and dusty toys that seemed to whisper tales of torment. A shadow emerged in the corner of the room, a woman, trapped in a moment of despair, her face gaunt, eyes dull and hollow. Sarah felt a rush of ice in her veins as she locked gazes with the apparition. "You shouldn't be here," the woman rasped, her voice like the cracking of ice. "They will find you. They always do." "What do you mean?" Sarah demanded, shaking with fear. The entity raised a skeletal hand, gesturing toward the mirrors, their surfaces rippling like water. "Look." Compelled, Sarah approached one. The reflection twisted, showing not her own face, but that of a shadowy figure with dark eyes, a smile that stretched unnaturally wide. It felt like a punch to the gut. Her heart raced, panic settling like a stone in her stomach. "No, no!" Jake screamed, tugging at her sleeve. She startled, pulling away, the mirror returning to show her and her son. "Oh God, Jake, we can't stay here." The walls vibrated in response, shadows seeping out, swirling with purpose as the woman's warning echoed in her ears. They needed to escape before the darkness caught up with them and revealed their own hidden fears, their own whispered treachery. Quick! Find another way out, she urged, dashing toward a door she hadn't seen before. Its surface glimmered, a promise of salvation. Reaching for the handle, she turned, but before she could pull it open, a voice called out from the corner, chilling and familiar. You can't run from yourself, Sarah. Time froze. She turned, staring into the face of her past, a facet of her life she had buried deep in her memories. What do you want? She breathed, heart pounding. It's not what I want, it's what you've become. With a swift motion, the room seemed to ripple again, pulling the shadows closer, almost beckoning her back to the darkness. Jake whimpered beside her, and she felt panic rise within. Escape was slipping away, time running out. Could they break free from this cycle, or were they doomed to be embraced by their own haunting reflections? Just outside the door, something slithered, something living, waiting for its moment, and it would not wait much longer. The door trembled slightly as a low, sinister sound rolled from beyond it, an unsettling whisper that clawed at Sarah's sanity. Let go, Sarah. Embrace what you are. Every rational thought slipped away like water through her fingers. She gripped Jake's hand tighter and turned back to the glimmering door. We have to get out of here, she urged, a spark of fear igniting her voice. Mommy, I'm scared. Jake's small face was pale, his wide eyes reflecting only the dark. No more time to think. The shadows were growing thicker, she could feel their cold fingers stretching toward her, eager to settle into her bones. Slipping beside a dusty old shelf, she peered back to where the figure loomed, the haunting face of her past, an image she wished to forget. You can't escape me, it hissed, the voice now rippling with malice. A frantic decision overtook her. She dashed toward the shimmer of light, steadying herself to wrench the door open. But it wouldn't budge. No. Open. She pounded against it, heart racing, breaths coming sharp and fast. The creature outside let loose a terrifying snarl. Soon they would burst through. Time stretched oddly, each second feeling like an eternity. A distant memory flared in her mind, a time before terror had gripped her life, before everything began to unravel. Would that past offer any guidance, or was it merely an illusion? Mommy! Jake's cry jolted her back. The shadows danced, their whispers clawing for clarity, mingling with the sound of the creature advancing. Desperation surged, she took a step back. Hey! Listen to me! She shouted back at the figure, you're not real. You can't hurt us. For a moment, its form flickered, uncertainty washing over its twisted features. You can deny me, but I will always dwell within. The door shuddered violently, sending splinters through Sarah's resolve. We can't stay here, Jake. We must find another way. She scanned the chamber for anything that could serve as a weapon or tool to escape. Frantically, she caught sight of a shard from a broken mirror on the floor. Grabbing it, she felt a rush of cold steel against her palm. Stay behind me. She turned to face the door, the shard reflecting the dim light, ready to protect her son, her heart pounding in tandem with the growling beast outside. Suddenly, the door crashed against the wall, shards of wood exploding into the room. The creature surged through, its figure grotesque and terrifying, mouth twisted in a malicious grin, each tooth glistening with droplets of darkness. It leaped toward her, an inky mass, an embodiment of nightmares. In that instant, the world shifted. The walls pulsed with a deeper thrum, and she felt the surge of power within the shard, a connection to the energy of the room. No! She screamed, thrusting the shard forward, aiming straight for the creature. Against her will, the shadows surged around her arm, wrapping tight, constricting like a snake. You think you can escape? The voice snarled, reverberating around them. With sheer determination, Sarah shouted, a fierce cry bursting from her core. You have no hold over me. I am not afraid. And just like that, a blinding light erupted from the shard, illuminating the chamber. The darkness screamed, an unholy sound that echoed as the light pushed out the shadows. For a breathless moment, Sarah tasted hope. But in an awful twist, the shadows swirled, merging back into the figure, the smile stretching wider, more insidious. "Your fear is your prison, dear Sarah," it said, a soft, insistent echo resonating in her mind. And this is just the beginning. Waves of darkness enveloped her, pulling her back toward the void. Jake's terrified cries shattered the air, grounding her. Fighting against the encroaching void, she clutched Jake tighter, willing strength to find a new way out. With a breath, she turned, ready to face whatever lay beyond the light. But as the shadows receded momentarily, a gleam caught her eye, a door. A new door, untouched, standing ajar. Outside, she could hear faint whispers, almost calling her name. Freedom. She hesitated, fear gnawing at her stomach. The creature's laughter echoed menacingly behind her. But she knew they had to try. She grasped Jake's hand, determination surging through her veins, leading him toward that promise of a way out. Would escape be real, or just another cruel ruse? The moment they stepped through, a sudden chill enveloped them. The air felt heavy, laden with the weight of uncertainty. What awaited them on the other side? Sarah squeezed Jake's hand harder as they crossed the threshold into the unknown. The door creaked loudly behind them, an ominous farewell that echoed in the silence. The moment they entered, she gasped. The world around them was unfamiliar, a stark contrast to the dark corridors they had just fled. They stood in a vast expanse of moonlit forest, silver rays filtering through the branches like scattered diamonds. The air was crisp, wrapping around them like a comforting embrace. For the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope surge within her. "Mom, is this safe?" Jake's voice trembled as he scanned the eerie surroundings. "It has to be, sweetheart." She turned around, half expecting the darkness from before to come crashing through, but the door had vanished, replaced by thick, twisting vines as if the forest had claimed their escape. "We need to find our way out of here. Stay close." They ventured deeper into the woods, the night air whispering secrets as they navigated through the underbrush. The light of the moon illuminated their path, and while shadows clung to the trees like ghosts, Sarah pressed forward. Each step resonated with urgency, but also a flicker of resolve. Suddenly, the haunting laughter returned, echoing through the trees. The echoes bounced off the bark and twisted around them like a tormentor's taunt. "You'll never be free, Mommy." Jake gasped, fear creeping back into his voice. "Keep walking," she commanded, adrenaline bumping painfully in her chest. The laughter faded but the voice lingered, curling around her mind, testing her strength. "It's just Mike, it's just him, Jake. We're done with that." As they walked, the shadows seemed to retreat as long as they didn't give in to the fear. But Jake stopped, his eyes wide, fixated on something behind a cluster of bushes. "Mom, look." Sarah approached cautiously, peering through the leaves. Her heart quickened. There, nestled on the ground, lay a shining compass, its needle spinning erratically. "What is that?" she asked, more to herself than Jake that he knelt and reached for it, but she caught his wrist, pulling him back just in time. No. It could be a trick. The remnants of dread crawled beneath her skin. What if it was bait? What if digging deeper only fed the shadows? But it could help us find our way. Jake insisted, tugging at her arm once again. "Please, Mommy." She hesitated, wavering between fear and her instinct to give him hope. With a steadying breath, she realized they had to make choices, even if they were terrifying. "All right," she said finally. "But be ready." They both lunged forward together. Jake lifted the compass and it gleamed in the moonlight, illuminating bizarre symbols that adorned the handle. The needles suddenly pointed firmly in one direction, a magnetic pull guiding them deeper into the forest. "Where are we going?" Jake asked, his voice trembling but determined. "To light, not shadows," she replied, almost more to herself. They took off, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the leaves. The laughter faded but the weight of Mike's darkness lingered, whispering doubts into her ear. You can't hide forever, you can't escape what you truly are, Mommy, I'm scared, Jake breathed, sweat glistening on his brow as they sped through the trees. I know, she replied, her heart pounding. But we're doing this together. They finally reached a clearing. The moon loomed large, casting a celestial glow over a calm lake. The water shimmered like a sheet of glass, perfectly still yet inviting. A beacon of hope flickered within. Over there. Jake pointed toward an old boat tied to the shoreline. Sarah nodded, breathless. Come on. They sprinted to the boat, and as she untied it, she cast a cautious glance around. No shadows. Just moonlit reflections. Within moments, they were adrift on the calm waters, the boat gently rocking. She exhaled, allowing a moment of relief. You think we're safe now? Jake asked, eyes on the horizon. For now, she replied, but unease clung to her. Just then, a ripple surged through the water, a reminder of the turmoil beneath them, and a voice echoed in the stillness, I will always be with you. Her stomach lurched. No, she whispered. We're done. You don't control this anymore. Suddenly, the compass needle began to spin wildly in her pocket. Jake's eyes widened. She could almost see the darkness rising, trying to claw its way back. Hold on tight. She shouted, gripping the sides of the boat as the waters began to churn. Moments felt like hours as waves crashed around them, the shadows threatening to drown out the light. The laughter grew louder, more chaotic, with her heart racing and tears blurring her vision. Sarah closed her eyes and channeled every ounce of strength she had. Get away from us. She screamed, the words erupting like fire from her soul. At that moment, the compass exploded with light, illuminating the whole lake. The shadows shrieked, clawing at the shores but unable to touch the brilliant glow. The water stilled, and she opened her eyes to see Mike's figure retreating, his smile fading into darkness. Mommy! Jake shouted, joy spilling out alongside belief. We did it! Sarah exclaimed, holding him tight as the boat floated steadily. With dawn breaking over the horizon, they broke the surface of the water, leaving their nightmares behind them. The echoes were gone. For the first time in a long while, peace washed over her. They had escaped, they had survived. As they drifted toward the growing light, the forest behind them filled with whispers of the past, but they were now just at the past. They were free, ready to face new tomorrows, together. Mommy, we're safe now, right? Yes, sweetheart, she murmured, a smile breaking through the remnants of fear. We're safe now. And with that, they sailed toward the rising sun, a fresh chapter unfolding before them. If you made it this far, don't just fade into the shadows. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss your next spine-tingling adventure. Smash that like button now if you want to feed the algorithm and keep us going strong. Flood the comments section with your thoughts on Sarah and Jake's incredible journey and what you think might happen next. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need this thrilling conclusion in their lives. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and I can't wait to bring you the next chilling story.